humans! Hello, 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 humans of the Twin Cities, of Minnesota, of the Midwest, of America, of the world. Maybe we've got some people outside our, continental U.S. listening to my voice. Hello, happy Monday. This is Ellie Krug with Ellie 2.0 Radio. I'm here, and I'm happy. I am happy. You may recall that we have to tape this show, so you're going to hear this a little late, and it's going to be big deal, but I'm happy because we are talking about a Blue Monday. So not like a blue sad Monday, but a Blue Monday where something good happened at the midterm elections. Although we're still waiting, as I'm taping this show, on Florida and Georgia recounts. We'll see. I actually have a daughter who's gone down to Florida to be involved with those recounts. Okay, all right. So I'm thrilled to be talking to you. We have a phenomenal show with the theme of helping the invisible, those whom society has cast away, the people that America imprisons. But before I do that, I want to do a quick shout-out to the listeners who attended my public gray area Thinking Human Inclusivity event that happened on November 5th. I'll talk more about that at the end of the show, but I want to thank you, those who came. I want to thank you for coming. I'm very grateful about that. New listeners. Okay, so regular listeners, you know what's coming right now, so just bear it with me. Hello, new listeners. Welcome. I'm happy that you are here. You may be wondering, why does Ellie Krug sound like a man? And the reason for that is I'm one of the relatively few transgender radio hosts in the world. Regular listeners, I just maybe only have to just say fill in the blank, and regular listeners, you can say that. But new listeners, that's why it's different. But, it's okay. At least from what I'm hearing from our listeners, it's all right. They like me. I'm very grateful for that. So, in my Block A, the block that we're in right now, I highlight I highlight someone who's an idealist, usually historical figure, but sometimes contemporary. But today's idealist is a famous singer whom you might not consider an idealist at all. And the singer is Johnny Cash, the man in black. Mega star. He sold over 90 million records before he died in 2003. Many are familiar with Johnny Cash's album, Live from Folsom Prison. But there's a huge backstory about Cash earnestly wanting to reform prisons and about him befriending prisoners. I don't like that phrase, prisoner. Frankly, I like to call them confined humans because that's exactly what they are. Some people people go to prison because they've committed crimes most of the time. There are some innocent people who are in prison, and I want to make sure that I understand that. And for those of you who have been wronged and who have been the victim of a crime, I do not want to diminish you in any way. However, many of those confined humans are set to come out, and at some time or another. Some never to come out ever because of the heinousness of their crimes. But for those who are to come out, the question is what kind of people will come out because of the way the system is. Johnny Cash's advocacy for prisoners, reforming the prison system, began when he was in the Air Force as a radio operator. He was 21 years old. He saw a film inside the walls of Folsom Prison, and that inspired Cash then to write Folsom Prison Blues. Here it is, just to give you a reminder. I hear the train a-comin', it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. Okay, well, there you go. That's a hint, and that was Johnny Cash's very first big hit. It landed him on the platform, and it also marked him as a man of having empathy for confined humans. Johnny Cash actually never served any time in prison, and notwithstanding Folsom Prison Blues, singing about killing a man in Reno, that never happened, although there was common belief that had happened, actually. All that Johnny Cash did, putting quotation marks around that, was that he served some time in jail for drunkenness and disorderly conduct. Still, as a result of Folsom Prison Blues, Cash began to receive invitation to perform in prisons. Cash then played his first concert in a prison at the Huntsville State Prison in Texas in 1957. He played many, many more prison gigs throughout his 30-year career, and he always did that incredibly for free, always. And in fact, when Johnny Cash's career started to slide in the mid-1960s, he was abusing drugs and alcohol greatly. There were record albums very reluctant to sign him. It was in 1968 that he recorded an album, the album titled At Folsom Prison, that reignited his career. Now, Cash's identification with confined humans wasn't transitory or by convenience. He saw who those people were, and you'll hear an interview that I'm going to do with another prison reform advocate about the need to see confined humans, to see them as human. And Cash saw that, and Johnny Cash earnestly believed in the power of redemption, the power that people can come around, that they can make something positive out of a negative situation, a negative experience. And because of his work in prisons and because of talking to prisoners, and Cash corresponded, he wrote in letters with prisoners. Because of that, he became to understand about abusive prison conditions. I mean, we're talking about abuse where there was murder and corruption, and which led to high rates of recidivism. And by the late 1960s, the civil rights movement had finally grown to include confined humans. And Cash felt that his fame, where he was in the late 1960s, gave him license to talk about prison reform. Some of the worst prisons in the United States were in Cash's home state of Arkansas. And in 1970, a federal court declared Arkansas's entire penal system unconstitutional. Consider that the whole system was totally a failure. Cash became involved with the Arkansas prison system at that point, and he developed a relationship with the then governor, Winthrop Rockefeller. In fact, Rockefeller was a Republican, Cash was a Democrat, but Cash had campaigned on behalf of Rockefeller for re-election in the late 1960s because Rockefeller promised prison reform. Cash actually challenged Rockefeller to match Cash's contribution of $5,000 for a prison chapel at the Cummins State Prison in Arkansas. Rockefeller met that challenge, and that prison chapel still exists. In 1972, Cash appeared before a U.S. Senate committee to talk about prison reform. So you got Johnny Cash there, a famous Johnny Cash, the man in black, speaking before senators. Cash was in black as he was doing that, relaying conversations he had about the prison and at Cummins in Arkansas and other prisons that he had been at. And when he testified before the Senate, he gave senators, he didn't just talk about abhorrent conditions, but he also offered suggested reforms, such as separating first-time offenders from hardened criminals, such as reclassifying offenses to keep minor offenders out of prison, such as focusing on rehabilitation rather than on punishment. Cash testified at the hearing that people have got to care for prison reform to come about. By the time Cash died in 2003 at age 71, Cash had humanized America's confined human population. So in the end, it wasn't all just about a song, but instead it was about seeing people who needed to be seen. You know, coming up, I will speak with a prison reform person from Wisconsin, Tonen O'Connor, who also happens to be a Zen Buddhist teacher. And I will tell you, this idea of seeing people in prison, of recognizing the need to treat them as humans. I know many of them have committed horrific crimes, but you know what? a very large percentage of people are in prison for nonviolent crimes, for crimes involving drugs or property destruction of some type, for crimes that don't harm any humans in terms of physical or emotional violence. We, as people, need to take the example of Johnny Cash. We need to communicate with those folks. You may remember on this show previously I've had Father Harry Hartigan, an apostolic priest who's been going up to Moose Lake and to St. Peter to talk with the sex offenders. Many of those people who committed sex offenses decades ago but are still within Minnesota's penal system, even though Moose Lake's, in theory, is a civil system for civil commitments. But remember, one of the things that Father Harry talked about is that what you can do is engage in a correspondence with a prisoner, to just give them some kind of outside contact, to give them some ability to have communication with the quote-unquote normal world. I would ask that you consider that and think about that as you go forward. And if you want, email me at elliejkrug@gmail.com, and I will put you in touch with Father Harry or with Tonen O'Connor, who's coming up soon, and you'd be able to have an ability to connect with them and figure out how to do mailings. You're listening to me, Ellie Krug, on Ellie 2.0 Radio on AM 950. If you like what you hear, visit my website at elliekrug.com. Sign up for my newsletter, The Ripple. And here we go, more Johnny Cash.
Be a good boy, don't ever play with guns, but I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that was...
At Pride Institute, being LGBTQ+ is the norm, not the exception. Their highly trained and skilled staff understand your issues and will help you live a happy, healthy life as a proud LGBTQ+ person. They offer you hope to overcome your addiction and live the life you want. Their treatment programs are designed to assist you in developing the knowledge, skills, and attitudes for long-term recovery. Therapy groups include health education, LGBTQ issues, HIV and chronic illness, trauma, grief and loss, transgender support, nicotine recovery, education, and sexual health. Pride Institute offers a residential treatment program, a partial hospitalization program that includes day programming with lodging, and an intensive outpatient program. If you or someone in your life can benefit from guidance and coping skills, life balance, and other tools necessary for long-term recovery, check them out at pride-institute.com or call 800-547-7433 now.
Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Shamblot from Shamblot Family Dentistry. We're the fear-free, get-you-out-of-pain-now dental office.
And I'm Rachel Shamblot. Did you know a lot of people are afraid of the dentist? You don't need to be afraid of my dad. He makes going to the dentist comfortable and even fun.
We don't care if you're a dental regular or haven't seen a dentist in years. We just want to make you comfortable and get you out of pain.
If you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get. Call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH or visit fixmyteeth.us.
Native Roots Radio is proud to announce we're adding an extra hour.
1 hour's too fast.
That's right, Uncle Curtis.
Great. More time for me to share important information about our sacred animals.
And report national Native news with reporters all around the country. Saturdays from 1 to 3 p.m.
We are awake.
Find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and streaming live on Facebook.
Hello, this is Ellen Krug from Hidden Edges Radio. When I'm not on the radio, I'm standing in front of audiences training about diversity and inclusion and on how to be welcoming to others who are different from us. More than ever, employers and organizations need professional diversity and inclusion training. I can offer that training through my company, Human Inspiration Works, LLC. I'd love to make your workplace or organization more welcoming. For more information, go to humaninspirationworks.com. Thank you. Brending Electrolysis on Grand Avenue in St. Paul has been a leader in permanent hair removal for people of all skin types and backgrounds for over 30 years, celebrating diversity and priding themselves on finding the right treatment plan for each client's individual needs, regardless of race or gender. Services include electrolysis, body waxing, facials, microneedling, and permanent makeup. Book your 60-minute complimentary consultation, including a 15-minute treatment today for beautiful, lasting results. Visit brandingelectrolysis.com. And we are back on AM 950 Ellie 2.0 radio. Johnny Cash, I just got to tell you, the man in black, but I bet you didn't know everything I just told you about him and about his work on prison reform. And so that does bring us to the big interview, and another person who is not afraid about taking on the prison system, and about the value of humans within that system. I've got a guest here online right now, Tonen O'Connor from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Tonen, are you there?
I'm right here.
Hi, Tonen. Welcome to Ellie 2.0 Radio on AM 950. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Okay, thank you so much.
So, Tonen, a little backstory for the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are relatively new friends. I met you over the summer at a Zen center in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, just by happenstance. And again, by happenstance, you thought it would worthy to bring me to Milwaukee to speak at a number of different venues, and I did that last week. And you and I got a chance to get to know each other better. You are a Zen teacher in Milwaukee. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Okay, but before that, you had a very long career in theater management in particular, and you were for 20 years the executive director of the Milwaukee Repertory Theater. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, 21, I suppose, but yes, indeed.
Okay, all right, and it was during the course of a theater exchange, if I have that right, when you went over to Japan in 1982, where you discovered Zen Buddhism, and do you want to bring us up to speed on how that shaped your worldview after that?
Okay, well, I did. I just stumbled into it. I wasn't really looking for anything particular. I knew nothing about Buddhism. I wasn't specially searching, but having spent the night in a Zen temple with a friend, as a sort of a tourist, I was so struck by it that I came back to examine, what that was all about. And it struck two chords. One was that at that time I was looking to try to understand what this is. I mean, what's going on here, really? Because I had sort of just was approaching middle age, I discovered mortality, and it seemed important to understand what's happening. The other one was that in the theater, our major focus is on creating empathy. You're very busy putting people on stage that other people have never seen or met and hoping that they will connect with that. So the bridge to the Buddhist understanding of being together, of interdependence, was very natural. So I came back and I read for 4 years. I'm a little slow. And then in 1986, I actually began practicing.
Okay, and then for a number of years, you were the resident teacher at the Milwaukee Zen Center. Is that right?
That's right. From 2001, when my teacher left to go to Alaska to a group there. So from 2001 to 2011, I was the resident teacher. Okay,
and listeners, you'll recall that I'm also Buddhist. I'm also Zen Buddhist. So it's just actually quite an honor to have Tonen here on the show. Because Tonen is a Buddhist of great stature here in the Midwest. And Tonen, I want to now pivot because part of this show is about seeing people who are unseen, as Johnny Cash saw confined humans and advocated for more humane treatment and reform of the prison system. You too have gone into the prison system in Wisconsin to talk to the unseen, to talk to people who are thought of lesser. And will you share with our audience your work in Wisconsin, because it started very slowly and it is now building ahead of steam?
Well, it began way back in 1998 when an inmate at Green Bay Correctional, which is a maximum security prison, wrote a letter to the Zen Center asking about Buddhism. And of course, I answered. And then came the thing, would you come visit I had never thought anything much about visiting prisons, or I suppose, like most of the rest of us, about the people that are incarcerated there. I did make the visit, of course, and from that grew pastoral visits, then visits with a second inmate who was someone that he knew, who actually, he's still incarcerated, and I've known him all these years since. But finally, we had a group there, and that's how it began. To my kind of total surprise, I loved doing it, because when you're meeting someone in that situation, I don't know the old phrase, they've got their tail in the crack, but the point is they really have their backs up against the wall, and they want to understand. So there's not much chit chat going on of any kind, and so when we, I'm sorry, I haven't talked to much of anybody yet this morning. So in encountering them, either in pastoral visits or our group sessions, there was kind of terrific interchange, and I found I just loved it. And I got also to know people and kinds of people I might not have encountered otherwise.
And and Tonen, the exchanges were about what? About them understanding their circumstances better, understanding compassion, because as Zen Buddhist, compassion is core to the work that we both do.
Well, I think was a trigger. Somebody once asked me, what in the world can you offer them as a Buddhist? And I thought about it, and I thought, I offer impermanence, change, because these people are locked into a system that, particularly in Wisconsin, where we have far too many people incarcerated, far many more than, say, in Minnesota. We have one of the largest sort of populations per capita in the U.S. It's too big to be flexible, or at least it can only be very little flexible. So you're stuck with who you were, with the mistake that brought you in. And so when I would come in and I say, well, everything changes and you're going to change, you'd see this light go on, because they thought, and I'd say, and you're an active participant in that change. We all are. It's not that everything is impermanent and interlocked without us. We're in it. So what was being offered was an opportunity to see differently, to maybe respond differently in an enormously negative situation. In fact, you'll hear I edited, and actually the Department of Corrections allowed us to publish a book called Buddhist Behind Bars, which is the autobiographical accounts of 3 men who are in prison for major crimes, violent crime, not just putting your hand in the cookie jar, but about the change that had occurred to them, and the fact that they were making a way for their lives there in what I kept hearing again and again and again, and you will hear today, everything is negativity in here. Everything is negative. All of the other people here are negative. The guards pick it up and they're negative. It goes on. So to try to make a life there was really what we worked on. And they'd bring in things that had happened, and how they dealt with them or not. So to me, it's very important to understand that we have people, real people, inside our prison system. And once you start knowing people in prison, you begin to realize there are hundreds of thousands of friends, relatives, nieces, nephews, wives, ex-wives, children out here who are for sure connected as well, Right. But the important thing, I think, to me, is that people, particularly in this state, we have a thing called truth in sentencing, which means there's no such thing as parole until you have served every last second of the sentence you were given. So there's very little positive incentive for positive change within our system. In any case, we just lock them away and forget about it.
Right.
And yet I have such respect for a lot of the people I've met in there, many of whom have made hideous mistakes. Destructive mistakes.
So, Tonen, I want to talk more about this, but we need to take a break, okay?
Sure.
And when we come back, I want to talk more about your work and maybe share a little bit about the stats as it relates to the prison system in the United States. This is Ellie Krug. I've been speaking with Tonen O'Connor, a Zen Buddhist teacher doing important work in the prison system in Wisconsin. When we come back from our break, we'll speak more with Tonen. Hope that you like what you hear, and if you do, visit my website at elliekrug.com. We'll be back in a minute. Thank you. Brending Electrolysis on Grand Avenue in St. Paul has been a leader in permanent hair removal for people of all skin types and backgrounds for over 30 years, celebrating diversity and priding themselves on finding the right treatment plan for each client's individual needs, regardless of race or gender. Services include electrolysis, body waxing, facials, microneedling, and permanent makeup. Book your 60-minute complimentary consultation, including a 15-minute treatment today for beautiful, lasting results. Visit brendingelectrolysis.com.
Enjoy the tradition of the Thanksgiving buffet at the Park Tavern. Come enjoy the feast on the 22nd. Roast turkey with stuffing, potatoes and gravy, cranberry sauce, salad sides, and the delicious desserts. And don't forget the hour of free bowling. Seatings are from 11 till 3, but because of the popularity, you'll need reservations. $20.95 for adults, seniors $14.95, kids 6 to 12, $10.95, and 5 and younger are free. Call 952-929-6810 or go to parktavern.net. This Thanksgiving, be thankful for the Park Tavern, Louisiana Avenue, north of Highway 7 in St. Louis Park.
Hello, this is Ellen Krug from Hidden Edges Radio. When I'm not on the radio, I'm standing in front of audiences training about diversity and inclusion and on how to be welcoming to others who are different from us. More than ever, employers and organizations need professional diversity and inclusion training. I can offer that training through my company, Human Inspiration Works, LLC. I'd love to make your workplace or organization more welcoming. For more information, go to humaninspirationworks.com. Thank you.
It's just a few weeks before winter officially settles in. Is your home ready for the holidays? Now is the perfect time to get your entire home zero-resified by the cleaning heroes at Zero Res. Get 3 rooms cleaned starting at just $149. You can also get $50 off your air duct cleaning when you call 952-0-RES, 952-0-RES, or book online anytime at zeroresmn.com. Zero Res. Spell it backward or forward, it spells the same.
At Pride Institute, being LGBTQ+ is the norm, not the exception. Their highly trained and skilled staff understand your issues and will help you live a happy, healthy life as a proud LGBTQ+ person. They offer you hope to overcome your addiction and live the life you want. Their treatment programs are designed to assist you in developing the knowledge, skills, and attitudes for long-term recovery. Therapy groups include health education, LGBTQ issues, HIV and chronic illness, trauma, grief and loss, transgender support, nicotine recovery, education, and sexual health. Pride Institute offers a residential treatment program, a partial hospitalization program that includes day programming with lodging, and an intensive outpatient program. If you or someone in your life can benefit from guidance and coping skills, life balance, and other tools necessary for long-term recovery, check them out at pride-institute.com or call 800-547-7433 now.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Sam Turnberg. Today will be mostly cloudy with a high near 29. Tonight's partly cloudy with a low around 13. Tomorrow, partly sunny with a high near 31. Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 33. And Thanksgiving, mostly sunny with a high near 42. The Eat Local Minnesota restaurant of the week is the Great Wall. Specializing in Szechuan and Peking dishes, they offer one of the most extensive Chinese menus in the Twin Cities, just north of 50th and France in Edina, and see the full menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
And we are back on Ellie 2.0 radio on AM 950. Before we broke, we were speaking with Tonen O'Connor, a Zen Buddhist priest from Milwaukee. And Tonen has been doing some very incredible work in the Wisconsin prison system by going in and speaking with, I think the phrase would be hardcore. Tonen, before we broke, you were talking about how oppressive the Wisconsin prison system is. And I have some stats here. So are you ready for them?
Yep.
So, and I'm sure you're well familiar, but our audience might not be, that as we speak right now, there are approximately 2.3 million people in America's prisons and jails. And out of that 2.3, 1 in 5 people is in just simply for drugs. I mean, that just kind of blows you away. 600,000 people languishing behind bars because of a drug offense. And of course, you and I have talked about this off air, which is that blacks make up 40% of the confined humans in prisons and jails right now, but they're only 13% of the U.S. population. And then the last thing, which is really kind of blows you away, that America's incarceration rate is the highest in the world. We incarcerate 716 people per 100,000. We have 4.4% of the world's population, but we house 22% of the world's confined humans. And that's taking into account the oppressive regimes of countries like Myanmar and North Korea and Saudi Arabia, all of those things. And it's just unbelievable that America, that's our resort. Our resort is to put you in jail rather than to try and work with you. So Tonen, before we broke, you were talking about the work in Wisconsin, and you're no longer going into the prisons, or are you still doing that on a select basis?
I was doing it on a select basis until about 3 years ago, but I've found I have back problems and I've gotten very old, that the long distance driving was tough. But in the meantime, what's happened is that the Milwaukee Zen Center has now, in what we call its program, 8 different Buddhist teachers, different Buddhist traditions, and not all based in Milwaukee, some based in other cities, that are going now to offer programming in 14 state institutions. So that the whole, I'm really very happy because it's not dependent on me anymore. I do a little coordinating. I keep a mailing list for the quarterly newsletter that we send out, which features writing by members of the Buddhist prison sanghas. It's edited by an inmate at Kettle Moraine Correctional Center institution. In fact, it was his idea 12 years ago, and for 12 years we've been doing this. So I do those things, and I write to people. I have several inmates involved in a correspondence course. We're doing koan study, but I'm no longer personally going in. What's really good is this now doesn't depend on me. It'll go on, hopefully, long after I've disappeared.
Right, of course.
And there's also quite a lot of this. I know a number of, not only the Christian ministry has really stepped forward in this kind of work in a very good way, and I know a number of Buddhist teachers who are going inside the prison system. So people are working at it.
Right, and the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center on Lake Calhoun, where I belong, we've had folks going into the youth correction centers and the youth lockups to talk to youth about Buddhism. And really, all of this work, though, is around seeing humans, about these folks who, the confined humans, are not seen by our society. And as Johnny Cash tried to make clear, that these are humans. These are real people. And many of them are eventually going to come back to society. The question is, will they come back hating everyone, or will they come back understanding that the world is filled with people that need compassion, and that we need compassion for ourselves? And I know that that's part of what you're teaching about compassion. And can you talk about how difficult it is to get people who maybe have never understood, never felt loved, come from backgrounds that you and I could probably only imagine for backgrounds of upbringings?
Well, oddly enough, it isn't difficult in a certain sense. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, because what I found is people are so hungry for respect.
Yes.
So if you give that, there is a huge response. It isn't as though there are some in the prison system that are people who are so vicious they should never be let out. Let me be clear.
Right.
But for those that would come to these Buddhist groups, you found very quickly that if you saw them, they would see you, and there were a lot of silent sort of cries of hurrah going on in all of that. And so their problem was, though, it was all fine within, the meeting we would have. And they'd come from different units, and they felt safe there, different races, different gangs from the system. But when they got out, back into that roiling sea of huge negativity, people who were thinking only of how awful things were, then it was very tough for them. So the issue really was that I'm very proud of the people who've managed to swim in that sea and turn themselves into actually remarkable mentors within the system.
Okay.
But it's odd that you'd think some people are so damaged, yes. But if they show up on your doorstep saying, I'm interested, there's an opening there.
For sure. Well, let me ask you, have you ever reached out to the administration to train prison guards, prison administrators on Buddhism?
Yeah, I have. I served for a great many years, and I just stepped back a couple of years ago, although I still listen in by telephone to the meetings, on what's called the Religious Practices Advisory Committee of the Department of Corrections here in the state. And it was people from every possible faith, and then program directors, chaplains, from the system itself. And we would meet twice a year. And we were able to both produce material for officer training. The director of that particular program on the state side, Kelly, I'm embarrassed, I can't think of her last name. I should know. I've known her for years. Anyway, Kelly is fabulous, and she has done trainings for officers about dealing with religious diversity on a fairly consistent basis. I personally have had the chance to go out a few times and meet with groups of either chaplains or in some cases program directors to talk about not only Buddhism but Eastern religions in general. And I feel, I could be completely wrong, but that there has been it's been 20 years, something of a shift in the understanding of that. It's tough because both the inmates who come in and the correctional officers who take the jobs often haven't a clue about any of this. And the chaplains, I have great respect for the prison chaplains because, their job is to support every kind of religious understanding, not necessarily just their own. And they really struggle, the best of them, to make it possible. I've only met really only one obstructive chaplain. I've met so many that were so helpful. But we have 22,000 people in the system here. It's tough.
For sure. I bet it is. Now, Tonen, you're also, is it all right if we let the audience know? You're 86 years old.
Sure, it's all right.
You have.
What have I got to?
You have the energy. You have the energy of a person half your age. The things that you are involved in, the things that you are doing, and you are. Are working on a project about solitary confinement. You've created a video called "Like an Animal in a Cage," and if people Google that, they can find that video. Is that right?
They can find it on YouTube, and what they should know is that it's a staged reading, if you will. All the people on that stage are, they're amateurs, playing correctional officers and a number of wonderful people who are formerly incarcerated, playing inmates. The solitary confinement system here in this state has been excessively used and is excessively punitive, and it's damaged a great many people. So once I was no longer a permanent volunteer, which meant I was treated like an employee of the Department of Corrections, I found myself able to be more, I suppose you'd say, politically active, working with a wonderful group here in Wisconsin called Wisdom that has chapters all over the state. And one of Wisdom's thrusts is to try to correct a whole range of things that are not working within our system. And I volunteered to serve on the solitary confinement working group because I correspond. I just got some material for our newsletter last week from a man who's been in solitary confinement here for over 22 years.
Oh my God. So,
it's we're making some progress. Things are, easing up a little bit, but it goes back to a law here, this famous truth in sentencing, because what it meant was, and I had a correctional officer say this to me, none of us in the system like that law. They've taken away all positive reinforcement.
Right.
It used to be that if you behaved well and you took the programs and you kept your nose clean, you might get a little easement or an earlier parole or benefits. It was all taken away. If you've got to serve your 10 years no matter what, who cares? In terms of, you behave well or you don't behave well. And it's been very, very difficult. And so what happened, and that's a number of years ago, under the aegis of our, thank heavens, former governor, the whole thing, had to swing toward punitive action in order to, in a sense, keep order. And hopefully this is going to change some over time now. But I hope people will go, it's on YouTube, and take a look at Like an Animal in a Cage, because every word there is from letters that I received from inmates who are either writing from solitary or who had experienced solitary.
Okay. Well, Tonen, I could sit here and interview you for all afternoon, but unfortunately we've run out of time. I just want to tell you that I want to just say thank you. Thank you, of course, for the work that you're doing in Wisconsin for confined humans. Thank you for the work that you're doing as a Zen Buddhist teacher. But I also want to thank you for how you've believed in my work and believed in Ellie Krug. I went to Milwaukee. I did 7 trainings, spoke to a couple hundred different people, all because you believed in me. And thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, it wasn't hard.
All right. Well, thanks, Tonen. I've been speaking with Tonen O'Connor from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Zen Buddhist teacher. When we come back from our break, I will do my last block about my work. Thank you. At Pride Institute, being LGBTQ+ is the norm, not the exception. Their highly trained and skilled staff understand your issues and will help you live a happy, healthy life as a proud LGBTQ+ person. They offer you hope to overcome your addiction and live the life you want. Their treatment programs are designed to assist you in developing the knowledge, skills, and attitudes for long-term recovery. Therapy groups include health education, LGBTQ issues, HIV and chronic illness, trauma, grief and loss, transgender support, nicotine recovery, education, and sexual health. Pride Institute offers a residential treatment program, a partial hospitalization program that includes day programming with lodging, and an intensive outpatient program. If you or someone in your life can benefit from guidance and coping skills, life balance, and other tools necessary for long-term recovery, check them out at pride-institute.com or call 800-547-7433 now.
Waking up is easy when you look forward to breakfast, served 7 days a week at the Downtowner Woodfire Grill in St. Paul. Try eggs your way with hash browns, bacon, or sausage. There are 4 delicious varieties of Eggs Benedict that should not be missed, and buttermilk pancakes, waffles, or French toast are always fresh off the griddle. How about a Bloody Mary or screwdriver from the bar? The Downtowner Woodfire Grill is located at 253 West 7th Street with plenty of free parking, or online at downtownerwoodfire.com.
In the process of planning your next event, consider D'Amico Catering. Their team brings extensive experience and knowledge to the table to ensure that your event runs smoothly. With over 20 years of event planning and culinary experience, D'Amico has established their reputation as the Twin Cities' premier caterer. They've been trusted to carry out numerous weddings, corporate functions, and nonprofit fundraisers. D'Amico has the right staff to ensure your event is perfectly executed every time. More at DeMicoCatering.com.
Hello, this is Ellen Krug from Hidden Edges Radio. When I'm not on the radio, I'm standing in front of audiences training about diversity and inclusion and on how to be welcoming to others who are different from us. More than ever, employers and organizations need professional diversity and inclusion training. I can offer that training through my company, Human Inspiration Works, LLC. I'd love to make your workplace or organization more welcoming. For more information, go to humaninspirationworks.com. Thank you.
Be sure to pick up your copy of this month's Natural Awakenings magazine, a free local guide to a healthier and more balanced life. Each monthly issue includes timely, local, national, and global stories. Learn about alternative and complementary medicine, nutrition, fitness for body and mind, personal growth, sustainability, and much more. Natural Awakenings can be found at area health food stores, food co-ops, and retail locations. More information is available at naturaltwincities.com. That's naturaltwincities.com.
And we are back on Ellie 2.0 Radio on AM 950. I don't know if you picked up my reverence for Tonen O'Connor, but I've just got to tell you, 86 years old, and what I forgot to ask her about is a quote that came out of Swarthmore College, their annual or their weekly or monthly, whatever, magazine for their graduates, because Tonen is a graduate of Swarthmore. The quote from her was that she has a life filled with life. I thought that was a really great quote, a life filled with life. She's doing incredible work. If only I could even get close. So thank you, Tonen. Thank you so very much. All right, we're in my C block now. This is where I talk about my work because the station owner wants me to do that as a way to inspire and connect with you. So first, let me say, as I said at the top of the show, we had our first. My company, Human Inspiration Works, had its first public training of gray area thinking, an open book on Monday, November 5th, and it was a real success. I mean, I was shooting for 120. We had 50. I'll go with that. We had 50 plus people. They were engaged. They were there for 2 hours. People just stayed fully engaged the entire time. We had some vulnerability. And importantly, we had several listeners in the audience. Thank you, listeners, for coming. I am so appreciative and grateful that you did that. And the commentary on social media after the event seems to show that people found the training impactful. I've been getting questions, will you do gray area thinking again for the public? And I will. I just need to get reorganized about doing that, and we will do that. Remember, I'm an army of one. So let me shift to talk about something that happened to me last week when I was in Milwaukee for 3 days of trainings at various places. And yes, that was because Tonen O'Connor, who you just heard from, invited me to go to Milwaukee. One of the places where I spoke was at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, and there I conducted my signature talk, Gray Area Thinking. Now, listeners who've heard me speak about this before, you may recall that one of the exercises we do in that game is audience participation, where it's called the identity game, where I put signs on the walls representing different identities that we as humans have for ourselves, how we group and label ourselves. You know, those signs are, family, age, race, gender, LGBTQ status. But I have one sign that is education, and I get everybody up. And I give everybody prompts, and I ask about personal identities that people will have, and then I ask them to go stand by signs that represent their identities. For example, one of the prompts is the identity that gives or affords me the most privilege is. And when we have mixed audiences, we see a lot of people who are white go stand by race. And then we have other prompts that are the identity I struggle with the most on a day-to-day basis. The first prompt we always have is, this is the prompt, the identity that my parents stressed or emphasized for me as I was growing up. And I had an experience in Milwaukee where something happened in back-to-back different trainings in different locations that really struck me. So, when I give the prompt, the identity that my parents stressed for me as I was growing up, I always have a fair number of people who stand under the sign of education, because here in the Midwest in particular, we have families that stress education. Well, when I was at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, I had about 40 or so people in the audience. I gave the prompt, the identity my parents stressed for me, and I had probably out of 40, I would guess we had good 15 people standing under education, that the education stressed them. And I gave people at the repertory theater. I said, would anybody like to share why you're under this sign, education, in response to the prompt, the identity my parents dressed for me. And a black woman raised her hand and came forward, and she talked about growing up in a low-income neighborhood and said that her parents pushed her to get an education. And this is, listen carefully to what she said. Here's the quote. Because my parents said, quote, no one can ever take that away from you, period, unquote, referring to education. The next day in Milwaukee, I did this very same training, gray area thinking, at a large manufacturing facility near downtown. Did the same training, had the same prompts, and again we had the prompt, the identity my parents stressed for me as I was growing up. And again I had a number of people standing under the education sign. And again I asked, anyone like to share why they're under the sign? And this time, a white woman raised her hand and came forward. And she said, without any prompting by me and no idea of anything that I'd experienced before, she said, and my mother always said to me that education was something that no one could ever take away from me, period, unquote. It was the same exact thing that a black woman the day before had said, that education cannot be taken away from us. For me, first of all, that helps always confirm, because I point out that education is the great leveler in our society. It is what does work to fix disparities. But it also, these identical words from different humans about no one can take away education, show to me that both of them were attempting to survive the human condition. And it reinforces that we really have so much in common. Unbelievable. I just needed to share that with you. Well, we've hit another show. I hope that you've liked it. I hope that you found it interesting. If you like what you hear, please email me at elliekrug@gmail.com. I need to thank our sponsors, the Pride Institute, which is a drug and alcohol residential and outpatient recovery center, and Brending Electrolysis. Tell Bev that I sent you, because Bev does incredibly great work, even though she's in St. Paul. Well worth the drive. We need other sponsors. We'd love to have them. Big thanks to my producer, Brett Johnson. You rock, Brett. You literally are the best. And a big thanks to you, listeners. If you like what you hear, visit my website at elliekrug.com. Sign up for my newsletter, The Ripple. I'm so grateful to have you, and I really appreciate your support and that you push me on. I'll be back to you next week with another group of idealists and work. Thank you so very much.